Hello, everyone. I'm here with the lovely Judith Collins, who I would say is one of the foremost experts on human auras that I've ever come across, but she's also the establisher of Earth Keepers and has a very long list of wonderful, wonderful achievements that I won't go on for. But first things first, welcome, Judith. Thank you so much for doing this.
Thank you very much.
It's so good to be here. So why don't you just tell the audience, why are we doing this? Why are we bothering recording a podcast in the first place?
My reason for wanting to get the information out there is because the environment is calling for it, and that we need to make sure that more and more people are awakened to who they are energetically, because we are physical beings living in an energy space on this planet, and the planet needs our help. I want to contribute to helping people to learn to understand and know themselves, to overcome traumas in their life, to free themselves up from all the stress, anxiety that modern life provides and imparts on them, unfortunately.
And you believe that this information that you have about being able to perceive the human aura and the colors in it can help support all of those things you just mentioned?
I know it can.
You know it can. Also, why now? Because I know you wrote this epic book, which I have devoured, absolutely love it, quite a while ago.
30 plus years ago.
30 plus years ago. And then you went on a bit of a hiatus, but now you're feeling ready to bring this work back to the world. So why now?
Well, 30 years ago when I wrote it, 65% of what I understand about the human aura was never put in that book.
Okay.
Simply because people at that point in time were not ready to hear what they needed to hear about the human aura. My time away from teaching worldwide, as I have done in the past, was because I cared for my husband's health for 22 years, but he's now passed. So now I'm freed up to come out once again to hold people's hands and take them on a journey of self-awareness.
Yeah. So I would love to know and share with the world what the world looks like through Judith Collins' eyes. Why don't you tell us a bit of your life story growing up and when this ability to essentially see detailed colors in a person's aura started to manifest for you and what that was like, because I'm assuming you were quite alone in that experience.
Because I began to see auras as a very, very young child, my journey into seeing auras was to learn a language of colour, understanding what the colours meant simply by learning to walk and talk. I knew that colours were generated by feelings, emotions, experience, shock, trauma. All these things together create all different kinds of colours, and certain colours I learnt. It took me about 10 years, but after I got to about 12 or 13, I had a full grasp of what aura said. For instance, if you had pale blue, by itself it meant that the person was very sensitive. But if you put that next to apricot, that meant that they were a good communicator. But if you put it next to orange, it meant that they influenced other people. If you put it next to red, they were an entrepreneur. Wow. So I started to learn the language of colours.
Yeah. So it's not just the colour you're seeing, it's how it interacts or where it's placed in the aura, what it's next to?
Yes.
Yeah.
The aura colours move around the body. People think that they move quickly, but only the colours around the head move quickly.
Okay.
When I was growing up, the thing that I saw in everybody's aura was lying and cheating. So between the ages of 13 right up to 16, I was very screwed up. I didn't trust anybody, and I was so emotionally screwed up. I had a very supportive family. And I'll give you an example of how screwed up I was. I, at the age of 14, got my little bits of money that I'd saved together, packed a tiny bag, left a note on my mother's table, and just said, gone away to think, be gone for days, weeks or months.
At 13?
At 14.
14.
And so I went away and I just hitchhiked up the road. I went up the coast. I slept on beaches. I sat on park benches overlooking the ocean, sat under trees in parks. I just thought. I got away from people because I didn't know how to turn the human aura off.
Yeah.
So I saw everybody every day.
Yeah.
And I could see what was going on in their lives, whether their life was traumatic, whether it was happy, whether somebody was lying, cheating, stealing. Everything was there.
Yeah.
And it traumatized me. I was away for about 6 weeks from home. When I got home to my parents, who were stressed and worried about me, I sat down and told my mother that I had thought about everything, and the best thing for me was to make sure that I didn't have neighbours, that I didn't have people that I could walk. When I walked out my front door, I saw their house. I didn't want to have neighbours on either side. I didn't want to have anybody living behind me. I had to be isolated because I didn't know how to close this down and I wasn't coping.
And did they abide by that?
My parents told me that in a world that we live in today, that's almost impossible to do unless, of course, you live on a farm. And that's exactly what I did.
Lived on a farm.
Lived on a farm.
So can you describe to me what visually do you feel when you see these auras? What was it like growing up with that visual experience?
Growing up with the visual experience, I saw the colours moving around the head all the time, because they do. Every time you read something, you have a conversation, all of that goes into your mindset. And then how you determine and feel about that and how you think it through, whether or not you adopt it as a belief or a moment of wisdom, insight. And that sets like concrete, because it becomes a belief system or a growth spurt of new information that helps you develop. And that sets like concrete down towards the hips, down the legs and down your feet. So I learned that if I really wanted to know something about a person very, very quickly, I looked at their hands and looked at their feet. Nothing else really mattered, because the colours around your hands have attitude in them. They have health in them. They have relationships in them. They have the work engagements in them, have everything. And your feet, the colours around your feet are very important, because you could be studying a course, but your feet are telling me that you're going to go in a completely different direction.
Yeah, wow. Yeah. Such detail. So how is it that now you're able to interpret the colours that might just be sort of little blobs of color? How do you interpret them with such specificity when it comes to someone's intention, experience, person who did this to their life? How do you interpret just color into such detail?
Well, I've been doing it for 70 years.
Yeah.
You get anybody who's been doing a trade for 70 years, they know it very, very well.
Yeah.
So I can these days safely say that I can read an aura as fast as people can read a street sign.
Wow, an entire aura. So you must have some kind of photographic memory as well.
No.
Or is it like you get an impression of a feeling?
If the sign says William Street, it's William Street, isn't it?
Sure.
And so your aura says the same thing. And I've only got a glimpse at the hands, a glimpse at the feet, and that gives me 65% of the person. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
And so these colours are different in everybody?
The colours in the aura are generated by emotions and feelings and life experiences and knowledge, and spiritual development, of course.
Yeah.
And so the colours are in everybody's auras to a certain degree, but the blending of the colours are different. Yes. As I said, you get red and pale blue, and that shows somebody's highly creative. And you put that with apricot, and then I simply just say to the person, oh, what creative art do you do? And they'll say to me, oh, I sculpt. So I can have conversations with people because of the blending of the colours. And negative colours show exactly the same way. I had a lovely young couple come to see me for an aura analysis, madly in love, love in their eyes, engagement ring shining. He would have been about 7 years older than her, maybe 10 years older than her. Anyway, I did her aura. He came in, I did his aura, took him to the back of the room so she couldn't hear, and I said to him, "There's a wife and children at home. Does she know?"
No way.
Yes. And she heard.
Oh, no.
And she came in because she was trying to listen very carefully what his aura, what I was saying about his aura. She heard. And she said, "What's this about?" And so right in front of me, there was a great big feud that began. Yeah.
So this was because you were doing aura readings?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes.
So what happened between 14, this being super overwhelming, and what led you to finally doing aura readings?
Finally doing aura readings is something that I had not planned to do, nor I aimed to do, nor I wanted to do. Right? It's most probably the last thing on my mind. But some spiritual people my husband was in the natural healing field. They had talked to my husband about getting me out in public. And he didn't know how he was going to do it. So he rang and talked to my mother and told my mother the importance of me going out into public. So between my mother and my husband, I went out into the Mind, Body and Spirit Festival in the 1990s, and I didn't know what we were doing. Paul just said that we were doing Earth Keepers because we had been self-sufficient and sustainable for so many years that there was an interest in people learning about it. So we put together some brochures and we set up a stall at the Mind, Body and Spirit Festival, but unbeknownst to me that my husband had already printed off some aura shapes, blank shapes, and taken colour-in pencils for me to do the aura. And I didn't know. And when my husband was setting up the stall, he said to me, "There's nothing you can help me with. Just walk around the show and have a look at a few things and come back in a little while."
So you didn't know what you were being set up for?
I didn't know what I was being set up for. So a friend of mine who taught yoga, I saw her there and she said she was going off to do a free workshop. So I said, "Well, I'll come with you. There's nothing I can do on the stall. I've been kicked off it." So over I go, we go and do this workshop. We walk out the workshop, finish the workshop, we walk out and we see this long queue. And she said to me, "I wonder what they're selling up there." And I said, "Yeah, let's go and have a look." Well, it wasn't. They were all queuing for me.
To want to get their aura read.
Yes. And so when I got up to the stall, people were saying, "Hello, Judith. Hello, Judith." And I'm going, "Oh my God."
This is before you published a book. This is before anyone knew who you were.
That's right.
Right, okay.
That's right.
They were just excited about the prospect of having their aura read.
Yes, because my husband not only had done that, but he put my photo up on the stall.
Oh, yeah.
With auras underneath it.
Okay.
So the people waiting on the queue knew my face. And they were all saying, "Hello, Judith," and I didn't know who they were. So anyway, the lady said, I'm first, and they'd all paid. They had their ticket. So it was highly organised, which is typical of my husband, very practical, highly organised person. And I did an aura very fast.
With colour pencils?
Colour pencils, yes, yes. And I found by the time I got to about the 4th or the 5th aura, I was having the time of my life.
You were enjoying it?
I was really enjoying it because people were asking me questions and I was able to give them answers and so on.
About their auric field or about their future or...
about whether they should change their job, whether they should sell their business.
So you can even see those kind of things just through colours?
Oh, God, yes.
Okay.
Because to understand an aura is simply to understand the language of colour. That's it. It's as simple as that. And you can see it in music, you can see it in plants, insects, spiders, beetles, animals, everywhere.
So you can see insect auras?
Yes. Yes.
Okay.
Yes.
I just find it so fascinating that you can interpret colour with such specificity, such as Do I sell my car? Do I go for this job? You know, it's hard, I guess, for someone who doesn't have that similar ability to interpret colors in such a specific way and not just be like a personality trait or an attitude or a feeling.
I'll give you a perfect example of how the aura can tell you something that's not happening now. I'll give you a very good example of this.
Like a past or future experience.
Yes.
Yeah.
I had a lady come to me for an aura analysis, and when I looked up at her, I paused, and she leant forward, put a hand on mine and said, "It's all right, I know the worst. I just wanted to see what it looked like." And her aura was going to hell and back. She'd lost her business. Her husband had committed suicide. Her son had died in a car accident, and her daughter had died of a brain tumour.
Oh, wow.
Yes, and they'd done all that. All that had happened within the space of 3 years. Yeah. So her aura was the darkest, dullest, half dead, 3/4 dead aura I had ever seen. So I did something that I had never done before. That's why I remember this.
Okay.
I thought, I've got to go right in past the etheric and get into the astral, because the astral aura has got several layers in it. And I searched and searched and searched, had all these people waiting in a queue. And I said to my husband, I'm going to be 5 minutes longer. And I searched through to the astral layer of the aura, and I found the tiniest pinhead speck of claret colour energy, which is the strongest colour in the aura. Claret.
Is that like a pinky
Beautiful
orange?
dark red wine.
Oh, okay. Yeah.
Claret.
I didn't even know. Yeah. Dark red wine. Okay.
And it's the strongest colour you can get. It's the colour of survival and overcoming everything. Right?
Okay.
And when I found it, I put it in there, put it in her aura and drew it, and I showed it to her. And she said, "What is it?" And I said, "Well, that grows and develops slowly over a period of time when it's in that location. So what is going to happen is things are going to unfold slowly, and in about 18 months' time, you should be on top of all of this." And she looked at me and she said to me, "Thank you so much." She said, "Thank you so much for that." Well, she came back to see me 3 years later, and her aura was different. She'd brought her old aura drawing to show me and compare. She'd retrained. She got herself an apartment, and life was starting to look up.
And her aura looked different?
Oh, yes.
Yeah.
Yes, totally different.
Yeah. So I know you've used this ability to see colors in the human aura for healing and supporting people on their healing journey. Tell me what that looks like.
The colours in the aura for people's healing journeys just show pockets of mustard, pockets of olive green, pockets of cream and brown, where there might be a trauma in the body. Health issues do show up in the aura, but they don't show up as cancer. They don't show up as motor neurons. They'll show up what links to it, what emotion links to it. There will be decaying patterns in the aura, which show as shadows. And so I've learned that that's decaying. And then I can say to someone, "Have you consulted a doctor?" And they'll say, "Yes, I've been diagnosed with cancer." You know, I can have those conversations with people in the healing that I did, and I got dragged into that healing as well. I've used it. The doctors, a medical profession, have used me in hospitals as an X-ray machine, they call me.
Wow, really?
Yeah.
Okay.
Worked in hospitals. And at one stage they were saying to me that they needed to replace the X-ray machine, and they thought of just hiring me instead.
Tell me what that was like. What were some of your hospital experiences like, or what did they ask you to do?
Well, I was called in by various different medical professions. And when I'm saying, I'm talking about whether or not it's oncology or whether or not it's orthopedics, all different types of medical. It was when they had exhausted all avenues and the person wasn't getting better, and they didn't understand why the person wasn't getting better. Yeah. So I was called in for that.
How did they know about you? Just because of the book you wrote?
Different. I mean, I worked in a hospital in Melbourne, and when I asked them how did they hear about me, they didn't really want somebody in seeing auras. They didn't want somebody like that in the hospital. But one doctor had heard me on the radio, doing a radio interview. One had seen me on the midday show in Melbourne. One had been to a lecture that I had done with his fiancée. She was into New Age movement and so on. And the other doctor had heard about me through somebody in his family, if I remember rightly. Yeah.
So talk me through the process of, let's say someone was presented who was quite ill.
Yes.
And how you or your information would assist with that healing and getting better, and whether you just did a diagnosis and let them sort of go away and heal themselves, or whether you actually pushed that healing to happen.
What I did in those days, because I had to be very careful where I was and who I was, and be as professional as I could be and not be New Age woo-woo, right? I would look at someone. First of all, they would dress me in a white coat.
Okay.
Yes, and I would walk in and they'd say that I was just a consultant.
Yeah.
Right? And I would look at the person and I would point to an area and just say, it looks a little bit over here, and I just gently on their body say, it looks to be about here. Is that tender in that way? Yes. Looks to be quite old, about 20, 30 years old. Yes, I've had a pain down there for 30 years. But it hasn't been frequent. It's infrequent. And the doctors would say, oh, well then that I would leave it at that. And then the doctors sometimes would get back to me and say that we found out what it was and thanks very much for your help. Not all the time did I get any feedback.
Okay. Yeah.
And I never got paid. I never wanted to be paid. Okay. Never.
Yeah. So I read in your book that you have done big workshops you were doing healing for individuals and then you were teaching this.
Yes.
So what did some of those healing sessions look like?
Well, what I did is, because I understand auras, I understand the power of unity, right? So I went to different places, whether it be in the UK or whether it be in America or Australia, and I ran healing circles. And I would put anybody who was sick, usually the newspapers would drum up all the sick people in the town and they'd come out to the town hall, and I would have 100 people in a circle, and I would I'd get them to close their eyes. I'd get them to breathe a certain way for 5 minutes. I would guide them through that. I would get them to focus on happy memories, whether it be childhood, whether it be, falling in love with their partner or whatever it was. Once we had all of that, because that relaxes people, I'd have people hold hands, but just to the tip of the fingers, one hand up, one hand down. And then I would run some healing energy through the first person, and I would have some music playing, something that could lift the spirit, Vangelis or Kataro, one of those, that could lift the spirit, and tell people they've got to keep their eyes closed, simply because once the mind gets distracted in some way, it can break the healing. So everybody kept their eyes closed, and we ran the healing through one person, went right round the circle, and I told them not to focus on whatever problem they had, just to focus on some good memories, listen to the music, and and there were people healed. Yeah.
What do you mean healed? What's an example, and how did that happen?
Oh, well, there were people that come in and had neck problems through a car accident, and they might have had surgery, they might have had physiotherapy for 5 or 6 years, they might have had Bowen therapy, osteopathy. The healing circle fixes them. People who were
Instantaneously?
Yes, instantaneously. Yeah. And so people who were scheduled for knee surgery never had knee surgery. People who had arrhythmia in the heart, stabilised the heart. And this is not me saying it happened. This is the people reporting to the newspapers that were covering the healing circle.
Yeah. Wow, it's like a Jesus story, isn't it?
No, it's understanding the human aura.
Yeah.
Understanding the human aura. You see, everybody has an ability to link to each other's auras. Okay. That's how we form relationships.
Yeah.
I know that. So all I did was put them in a circle and they would link naturally. And all I had to do is source in the power from above and throw it right through and let their auras do the rest.
Right. So that's what you did differently. You connected to the source of all life.
I connected to the source of the universe.
Yeah.
So the source of the universe just came down through me and tapped into the third layer of the astral aura, if you want to be specific. And so that was their physical and spiritual connection in this life.
Yeah.
So it was going to hit the physical part of the aura, which is where the injury is.
Yeah.
And it was also going to do the spiritual part, which helped them to enlighten themselves. There you go.
So can people do it without you? I mean, they can't, because otherwise we'd have healing circles all over the world and people wouldn't need to go to doctors and they wouldn't need healers and stuff. But there was something specific that you brought to the table. What would you say that is? I mean, sure, your ability to see auras, but would you say it's your connection to the source of all that is, your connection to spirit? Like, what is it? Can people learn how to do that? Or can they cultivate that within themselves?
People who I have taught over the years to see and read auras have gone on to do things in their own life, whether they've been social workers and they've developed a new sense of social work, whether they've been school teachers and they've developed a new sense of that. When it comes to healers, they find that their healing strengths are more fine-tuned. So, I mean, yes, I don't think I'm that unique. I mean, I might be in the sense that, and I've come to understand that, in the sense that I've grown up seeing aura since the day I was born and it's never been shut off. Yeah. So therefore, my understanding of the human aura is quite different from somebody who learns it in a course or reads it in a book, right? One of the things about my book is that I put it into the day-to-day language so people could understand it in their life. Yeah. A simple little act of a mother holding a brand new baby, and she holds the baby up to her breast and she holds the hand on the back of the baby's back, which covers the solar plexus and the heart chakra and connects her intuition with the baby's intuition. And if the mother is a single mum and she's traumatized by being alone, or her husband's away at work and she's traumatized not being able to cope with the baby, it's a brand new baby. What happens when those links happen? She's linked up and the baby enhances her aura.
Beautiful.
Yeah, because the baby's all fresh and new, pure, untainted.
Yeah. So how do children's auras differ from an adult's auras or babies?
They don't.
Yeah.
They don't. The adults have a more complex aura because there's more going on. But children since the 1970s, mainly the 1980s, have had auras just as complicated as adults.
Okay. Why? What changed in the 1980s?
We went from mum being at home when the children came home from school, mum being able to come up to school and help on the canteen, or see the child in a play in the middle of the day at school. Dad was out working. There was that support, and we went to women working, forging careers, men working, forging careers, children fitting into that lifestyle. Yeah.
And that started to create complexity in their auras at a younger age.
Yes.
Because they had to grow up faster.
They had to not only grow up faster, but they had to develop skills that they hadn't had to develop skills before. Once upon a time, if we get back to hunter and gatherers, because my understanding of auras has really come from watching everybody around the world, and that includes people in their native countries that don't live in suburbia, right? So my example of the children is that they've gone from learning by osmosis with their parents to having to learn by themselves. So in the 1980s, there was a phrase that the national media called latchkey kids. That's what it was. Children who went home to empty homes and they had a key to the house till mum and dad came home. And I started to look right in the 1980s, I started to look at children's auras to see how much they were changing, and they were changing greatly.
And what else have you noticed change over time? Because I know that from your book, you can see collective auras. So first question was, what change have you seen in adults? And what change have you seen in collective auras over the past few decades?
Auras have changed about every 10 years. If I compare the auras today, 2025 as we're going into, and the auras of 2000, or even the auras of 1980, the aura today is full of chaos.
The individual.
Yeah, individual aura is full of chaos. The difference in this aura in 2025 is that people are trying to find their place in the world. Whereas the aura in the 1960s, people knew their place in the world. And this is the difference that we've got. On my blog, I wrote a post from the 1950s right through to today and all the changes that have occurred in the auras. And it's quite startling. I can see why people are frayed at the edges. I can see why they've got colours and mixes in their auras that the people in the 1980s and 1990s, 1970s never had. Yes, because life today moves too fast. And I suspect because of the physical layer of the aura, the etheric layer of the aura, and the astral layer of the aura, it tells me that this part of us is going so fast, but the biology of who we are hasn't evolved as fast as this has. And so therefore we are disconnecting because our biology has not kept pace with the rate the world is moving. So lots of people feel as though they're disconnected
from themselves.
Yeah. And they are. They are. It's called biology.
Interesting. And you think this is technology, current state of the world, chaos happening around, societal norms and expectations?
I think it's societal. I think it's norms. I think it's technology. It's definitely mobile phones.
Yeah.
You can see that. I've got a post on my blog just focused on mobile phones and what it does to your aura.
Cool.
That's basically where people are getting their chaotic sense within themselves. But the disconnect is coming from the fact that this has moved faster than the biology of the person has moved. And so there is the disconnection of it. Yes. I don't know how we get biology to keep up with AI. I mean, that's going to be so interesting, how people cope, because what you've got today that's different in the aura is coping mechanisms. People today don't. They don't. Yes.
Why is that? I thought it'd be the other way around. I thought we'd have a lot more coping mechanisms to cope with that disconnection from self.
The coping mechanisms that we have within ourselves are innate in our auric energy plus our biology.
Mm-hmm.
And auras from the 50s going right through to the 70s, the 80s, started to wean a little bit in the 90s. But prior to that, people had coping mechanisms that people today don't have. Those coping mechanisms were based on life experience,
Mm-hmm.
coping with death, coping with tragedy, coping with loss, coping with all these types of things, whereas people today don't have those same coping mechanisms as people from previous generations had.
Because of their lack of resilience.
Mm.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah.
Okay, interesting. Okay, so now we're going to get specific about the structure of the human aura from your perspective, and the different layers, and all of the multitude of different colors that come with it. So why don't you just go ahead, start telling me about how you perceive the colors of the human aura and the different layers that are involved.
Well, after I'd been seeing auras for about the first 15 years, I had a very, very good understanding of them. And I learned that all the colours that come into the aura are all generated by the way we think and the way we feel and the way we respond and the way we react. And that's a simple thing. And the degree of how we react and what's been thrust upon us either intensifies the colour or weakens the colour. And so the understanding of colour formation is not just in one layer of the aura. It comes right across from all the different 7 layers of the aura. And the outer layers are something that we connect to when we die, so they're not important to us in this lifetime. The layers of the auras that are important to us are the astral and the etheric and the physical. They're the ones that we have to deal with all of our lifetime. So, for instance, the physical is how we are. If we injure our knee, it sits there in the physical layer of the aura.
So that's the first layer, that's the closest to us?
That's the closest to us,
yeah. And so you might see it as, like, let's say you fell and you hurt your knee.
Yes.
Would you see it as like a gap in the aura?
No, you don't see it as a gap. You see it as a shadow.
Okay.
And that just tells you that there's something, the energy around that is a lot poorer than the rest of the aura. And so you'd say, oh, you've hurt your knee, have you? Oh, yes, I have. You know. Then you get out to the etheric layer of the aura, and then the astral with all its layers in there. And they're the ones that we have to deal with. So they're the ones that we'll talk about. The physical layer of the aura has got colours that relate to Mother Earth, our environment, connection to the oxygen that we breathe, minerals, walking on the ground, walking through the bush, swimming in the ocean. It's got all of that. When we get into the astral is very interesting. Because the astral has got multitudes of different colours in there. Because it relates to multitudes of our life. We can have the experience. It's where memory is held, right?
Right. Memory. So there's no emotional layer?
Yes, it's all in the astral.
Okay, so first you've got physical, then you've got etheric.
Then you've got the astral with all its layers inside of it.
Okay.
And so etheric acts as the bridge between the two, right? And it's the thing that keeps you connected, a sense of balance, a sense of unity with the people that you love and the people who love you. Your likes, your dislikes, your pets, those types of things.
That's in the etheric.
Yeah, it's in the etheric.
And would you say that holds the emotional memories or the emotional experiences?
It does hold some of them, but then they overlap into the astral layer of the aura, the first aura, astral layer. And that's where multicolours start to come in. Because in the first layer of the astral, it holds memory. So if you remember good times with your grandparents or your aunties and uncles or your cousins, right, it's locked into there.
Yeah.
And you can draw on that at any time. But as you go into the next 2 layers of that, that links up to past lives. And so memory is locked into some of the layers within the astral. And when the astral records everything in your entire life, and when you die, the astral, the etheric and the physical all connect as one, right? And they come up through the solar plexus and out of the body. I have had the most wonderful experience from some of my clients who were dying of cancer, who asked me to be by their bedside to make sure that their aura was going to lift as clean as possible. And in exchange, I got to see how the whole process of death happens in the human aura. So I've seen that in several people, and it works exactly the same. The 3 layers of the aura come down, go through the solar plexus and out. And the colour that comes out is yellow, buttercup yellow.
Every time?
Every time, buttercup yellow.
And what do you mean by clean?
Clean means that everything has been put together with no negativity. It's all positivity, all balanced and out.
Yeah.
Yeah.
What are some of the things that might prevent a not clean exit or a fragmented exit?
Shock.
Okay.
Shock.
Accidents. Trauma.
Yep, trauma. Yep.
Okay. Yeah. Like they're frozen in time almost.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
Didn't expect it.
That's right.
Couldn't emotionally prepare.
Yeah, that's right.
And what happens to their souls? You know, are they forever doomed to have a fragmented soul until someone comes along and helps move along earthbound spirits, or helps do energy work on the ley lines, and hopefully, you know, they get caught up, or are part of their soul sort of floating around in a fragmented state?
Part of their souls do wander around in fragmented states.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah.
How that's maneuvered in the spiritual realm is from human consciousness. The more negativity there is in the world, the more we hold it back. The more advanced we become spiritually. And that doesn't mean we can meditate for longer or we develop all these spiritual abilities. What it means is that we become more human. We become more balanced as a human. We're fair. We're honest. We're loyal. We're respectful.
Integrity.
That's right. Yes. Yes.
Cool. Let's go back to the colors, right? So we have the physical layer, we have the etheric layer, and the astral layer. So tell me more about like what different colors mean, where they show up, and how they're formed.
Because the astral layer holds memory, memory has emotion, memory has feeling, right? All the colors are produced through that.
Yeah.
And they feed down through into the physical layer of the aura. And they show around in the 3 layers coming out. When you see an aura straight on, you see a physical layer, you see an etheric. Yeah. That's when people say, I can see a bit of a haze around it. And that's it. You know you're in the etheric when you've got the bit of the haze, a bit of a glow. Yeah. Somebody sees something out of the corner of their eye, that's the etheric. So that's stage 1, getting into that. The colour comes in from the astral layer of the aura, and it represents who that person is or their life experience. So we can get the whole range of reds, blues, greens, yellows, whites, and so on. How those colours combine together is the language of the aura. Yeah. It's like you can say A, B, C, D, E, but put them together and they form a word. It's the same thing.
Can you give us some examples?
Or let's take orange. Orange is the colour of communication and motivation, right? Now, if we put orange next to red, then it shows that we've got a public speaker. Somebody that's on the podium. And so it could be a priest, could be an educator, It could be, if we've got pale blue next to it, it shows us that that person who's on the podium, who's the public speaker, is talking about sensitivity, some form of sensitivity. Now let's get another colour. Let's get red sitting over there, and then we get all those colours mixed together with a little bit of pale green in there, and we'll say, oh, he's a psychiatrist. So it's like reading the colours of the aura and how they sit side by side. It's exactly the same way we read words on a piece of paper or in a book.
Right.
They're all letters that come together to form words.
Right.
Yes.
Okay, that makes sense. So just because you see an A, in cat,
yes,
it's going to be very different from an A in anger.
That's right.
Gotcha.
Yeah.
But it's still present in cat and it's still present in anger.
It's right.
That makes more sense now.
Yes.
That's a really great analogy.
Mm-hmm.
What else?
Well, in the round about the fifth layer of the astral aura, there is a barcode, and it's woven like the colours that are in it is woven like a carpet mat, right? And it's long. It's very, very long and thin. And took me 4 or 5 years to interpret what that meant. And then when I did all the testing on different age groups, from young children to people in their 80s, I realised it said the same thing to everybody. It's a message that comes with us when we incarnate into this life, and it keeps us grounded. It says, be human.
Be human.
Be human. Yeah. Be human.
In this physical form.
In this physical form. Now, what does being human mean? Yeah. That means that we live in this world, we breathe in this world, we eat in this world, we love in this world, and we die in this world. Yeah.
As opposed to what?
As opposed to living a long life, as opposed to not having emotional feelings, as opposed to not learning how to develop relationships, not learning how to communicate. A lot of people think that the spirit realm is far advanced of us, and it's not. It's just different. A lot of people who incarnate on this planet are far more advanced than some of the layers of the spirit realm that exist. Because you, when you die, you take back all the skills you've mastered. Communication skills, loving skills, belonging skills.
And would you say those in particular, or what is it in particular that are unique to the human experience?
Well, there's a few things.
Yeah.
Because of the colours that appear in the auras tell us exactly what are the most common things. Communication.
Interesting.
And that's all in levels. Communication is learning.
Yeah.
Communication is loving. Communication is education. Yeah. So there's a
expression.
Whole... Yeah, expression. Yep. Yeah.
Okay, communication and what was the other one?
Communication and then loving.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
Okay. Those are quite unique to the human experience.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
Okay.
And to fall in love, to be attracted, for energies to come together, to fall in love, especially if that, now the aura shows exactly if that person is a member of your soul family. And you hear everybody talking about soulmates.
Yes.
And the answer sits in the aura.
Okay.
Because in the aura, there's a tiny, in the astral aura again, somewhere between the 4th and the 5th, there's a tiny little pearl of energy.
Yeah.
And it is the colour of pearl. That's why I call it pearl. And it is round and it's shaped like a pearl. It sits there and it shows that you're united to this person in your soul family. Now, if you go out with a group of friends from work and they're not members of your soul family, and somebody looks at your aura, that little pearl has disappeared. But the moment you give it back to your family, your mother, your father, your grandmother, your husband or whatever, that little pearl appears. So it moves. It links the soul family when the soul family is together. But when you're with another group of people, it disappears.
And when you say soul family,
yes,
what do you mean by that?
That is groups of energy. And this is really this is getting back to plasma now. This is groups of energy that have melded together and formed into all different types of beings to travel together and learn from each other.
And is there is that who we ought to seek out? Or
no, we don't seek them out. They come to each other. They come to us.
Yeah,
we find each other.
Yeah, because we still want to interact with those not of our soul family.
Yes, that's right.
Not just stick to our own.
But you haven't asked me the important question.
Which is?
Why does it disappear?
Why does it disappear?
Yes. Because all these things in auras fascinate me.
Yeah.
Why do you see it in this and you don't see it in that? It disappears because you're learning to get to know each other. It's in the aura of the soul family because you've known each other for centuries.
So it disappears because you're getting to know people who aren't part of your soul.
Yes, okay, that's right.
Okay, so it's like a recognition pearl.
Yes,
okay.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And it has no effect on, it's not good or bad.
No.
Yeah, it's just a state of being.
That's right.
Yeah.
I've seen pearl connections in people who fight like cat and dog. But can't live with it.
Maybe even more often.
Yeah, but can't live without each other.
Yeah.
And can't live with each other.
Sounds a little toxic.
And you look at couples who get divorced and then 10 years later remarry.
Yeah. Yeah.
I find all that fascinating.
Yeah. Yeah, so this is really interesting advice for people who might be on their spiritual journey, but tend towards the path of isolation and the path of seeking self-mastery, but are isolated in that journey. And I think this is a good reminder to them that there are times for that, for sure, right? That we ought to cultivate ourselves. But one of the imprinting life directives or barcodes, you say, is to really learn how to be human.
Yes.
Yeah, and learn relationship and emotions and connection.
I've had lots of examples of that.
Yeah.
Hundreds of people over the years have come to me to ask me why their spiritual development hasn't advanced more than they thought it would. And all of their auras, every one of them, their auras have shown that they've had relationships to deal with. And once they've dealt with those relationship issues, they have freed themselves up to advance more spiritually. Yeah.
Would you say that's because there's a limited amount of energy in a human being, and if your emotions are caught up, entangled with someone?
It's because this is why the barcode's so important.
Yeah.
Be human. Deal with all the things in your human life and you will advance. Don't deal with them and you won't.
So starting from your physical health.
Yes.
And your overall health.
And the people around you.
Yeah. Food, emotions.
Right.
Exercise.
Yes.
Yeah.
Because you ask yourself then, the next question that I would ask myself is that why would we do that? Why do we have to do that? And the answer is simple. Because there's two things that strengthen an aura, that heal an aura. And it's not what people think. Number one that strengthens an aura is self-esteem.
Self-esteem.
Yeah, self-esteem. Learning to love yourself, respect yourself.
Yeah. And how might someone build their self-esteem?
You build your self-esteem by being reared properly by your parents. And if you don't, not reared properly, then doing acts of kindness, doing things that you like that reward yourself, doing things that reward other people, being liked, being loved, achieving things, all of that gives you a sense of self, right? The other strong energy that people can really strengthen up their aura, and that's enthusiasm. Enthusiasm has a power to be able to break through the greatest depths of depression, overcome hardship. Let's just have a look at the handicapped Olympians. And look what they've done with enthusiasm, overcoming.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So what is the most powerful emotion in the human aura?
Enthusiasm.
Enthusiasm.
Yes. Because you hear lots of people talk about blocks in the human aura, but there is no such thing.
Okay. I've definitely been prone to using that term before of when we have an emotional blockage that then downstream can create physical ill health, but you're saying, or maybe tension.
Yes.
So what is it about the word blockage that doesn't feel right to you?
Because nothing is blocked. Nothing blocks in the aura. If it blocked in the aura, you'd be dead. Because the energy has to move all the time.
Yeah.
Because it's breathing. And
but can there be pockets of tension?
What it has, you have shadows. And those shadows just hover over. And they are tension, their anxiety, their nervousness. But nervousness and anxiety in an aura have a twofold edge. You can be anxious and nervous about getting your driver's license, but once you get it, that all disappears. So those two things, while you can look at someone's aura and say, oh, look at all the nervousness and anxiety they've got in the aura, a half an hour before they go for their driver's license. And then they get their driver's license and it's all gone. Yeah. That stays in the aura if that's the makeup of the person. So if the makeup of the person is to be anxious and to be nervous and to be self-resentful, then those things in the aura create shadows and different colours. That's when all the mustard colours start to come in. And that means that they're on a path of not self-destruction, but decline. Decline.
Yeah.
Decline in everything. They have a decline in relationships. They have a decline in their attitude to work. They just decline.
Mustard yellow.
Yeah.
Okay. What happens to the human aura when two people enter a relationship or they interact with each other? Can the different layers of the aura sort of merge and interact in a way?
When couples come...
Or influence each other?
When the couples come together, there will be an exchange of energy that takes place over a 1 to 2 year period. And that will give them a sense of union and it will give them a sense of exchange. And that's very important because exchange means that you are permitting someone to enter the closest part of your auric energy. And that brings with it a bond. It brings with it a greater sense of love, a greater sense of understanding, gives you the ability to influence each other so that you can have good and bad, bad and good. It gives you the freedom to be able to argue your point of view and their point of view They can argue their point of view and you resolve that, or you agree to disagree.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. That's what the energy allows you to do in a relationship. In a child and a mother, it's a testing relationship, and that's for the mother's growth and it's for the child's growth. The same with the father and the child.
Mm-hmm.
So as we come together in relationships, those relationships are all there for our exchange of energy, which is an exchange of love, an exchange of learning from each other. That's why soul families travel together.
Mm-hmm.
They travel together in a safety net. Most people don't know that.
Yeah.
When you look at them all together, sometimes you get a family where you've got mum, dad, 3 brothers, right? And 2 of the people, say 2 of the brothers, are not members of the soul family.
Yeah.
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 Just because you're in a physical family doesn't necessarily mean you're a part of the same soul family.
That's right. But there will be 1 or 2 because that's the safety net.
Yeah.
Soul families travel together in a safety net.
Yeah.
That's to give them longevity of experience, not longevity of life, but longevity of experience.
Yeah.
They can capture more experience.
Okay.
Being in a family with non-soul members means that, we've got to learn to know them.
Yeah.
And that means that you can have all these testing types of relationships going on as you get to know each other.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. But would you say that from some sort of like cosmic grace of intention of the universe that these are always intentional?
They're always intentional.
The families that we're born into?
Yes, always intentional.
Yeah.
You have to live life in the best way that you can. You're being human.
Yeah.
So you have to learn to respect and to forgive and to tolerate, to understand. Yeah.
And what would you say to people who were born into quite abusive families or neglectful parents or experience severe childhood trauma through their families?
That takes deeper levels of all those things I've just mentioned. Yes. And so that's an experience that takes a deeper level of understanding, but it also brings great lessons. The lesson of self-recognition. I always feel saddened to hear the reports of adults who as children were being abused by their local teachers or priests or whatever. But I also understand that the lesson in that is self-recognition. And when I hear them in their 50s and their 60s and they're still reliving the trauma, they have not reached a point of self-recognition. They have not dealt with it and moved on. And that doesn't mean to say that they ever forget. It's traumatic. But they don't use it for the benefit of other people. They keep it in the negative box, not the positive box.
Yeah.
Yeah. You can have somebody who has been, you might have a woman who's been gang raped, right? She forms a support group for other women. And then they form a blog, and then they do this, and then they do that. Then they have a phone in line and whatever. That's using it for the positive, not the negative. So the lesson in all of those situations, and traumatic as they are, is self-recognition. Yeah. It's painful. A painful way to go.
Yeah. So do you see links between emotional and physical issues in the aura?
Yes, there are. All physical issues in the aura have got an emotional link, but that emotional link can also be connected to members of the family. Say, for instance, you've got a mother who is dying of cancer and she's got 3 young children, and those children are by her bed the whole time. That's getting as much time together as possible. The husband is trying to figure out how he's going to survive with 3 young children. What's he going to do? Plus losing the love of his life. He's got to be able to grieve, and he hasn't got time for grieving because he's got to look after 3 children. And he's trying to sort that out. Think of all the lessons that are in there for that family. Yeah. And so whenever we look at life, we've got to look at where the lessons are. You've got to be able to, and most people don't have the strength to do this. This is why the world's in chaos. Step back and look at the situation. Like when I lost Paul, you know, my whole world just changed until I stood back and looked at the situation. If I lived to 100, I still would have lived more of my life with Paul than I've ever lived without him. So there's my reward. Yes, you've always got to look for the bright side of life.
Yeah. And so if people are going through emotional turmoil, is that the advice that you'd give them? Look for the lesson and take a step back for greater perspective.
Over the years, when people have come to me looking for advice, I've always told them that there will be good come towards the end or when it's ended. They should either make way to let that in. That's the most important thing, because it won't come to you unless you let it in. We have the ability as human beings to be so self-denigrating, so self-guilty, and so belittling of ourselves that we don't let the good stuff in. And we can't see the lessons as they're folding. And when the lessons are showing us that something good has come up, we deny it. Yeah. And when we've got a group of people like that, that's when we need to be helping those people to see life in a better light.
Yeah. So with some of your healing clients that you had in the past, can you talk me through what's happening when they come to you and what changes in their aura when they experience healing?
It's an interesting question, because not everybody responds to healing the same way. Some people have come to me riddled with cancer, and I say to them, what do you expect of me? What do you expect from me? What do you expect to happen? And some people say, I just need peace. And so I give them peace. One woman, Donna, who came to me, she said to me, I want to stay alive long enough to see my twin girls start school. And I said to her, how old are they? And she said, 6 months old. And I said, well, let's work together and do that. And Donna died 3 weeks after her girls started school. Yes. So it's the determination of her energy and the determination of my energy that came together to make that happen. Yes. So as a healer, what happens in the aura? Well, what I saw happen in Donna's aura, it got filled with claret. And it's a survivor. It will push through. When it appears in the aura, you know someone's going to survive long enough to reach their goal. And other people, they relax into the healing and they find sensitivity, and that gives them the peace to die. In other people who have been focused on maybe having their heart fixed, if they've got a problem with their heart. But
do you mean like a heart operation?
A heart operation.
Yeah.
And they may be looking to get that fixed, but something that they've had for much longer, which is a very sore ankle, it gets fixed first. So you never know.
Yeah.
I used to take healing as an uncharted landscape.
Yeah.
And so you'd go into it as the healer,
Mm-hmm.
you go into it and you would let the healing do what it had to do.
Yeah.
And if it fixed somebody's heart, if it fixed their irritable bowel syndrome, if it fixed their macular degeneration in their eye, if it fixed any of those, that was good for them. But it didn't fix it in the next person. So the healing, I understood the healing in the aura and the changes that I saw in the aura for those who got totally healed, partially healed, shifted their psyche, or some part of their body was healed. Not what they originally asked for. Maybe not. But the healing did what it was supposed to do. Yeah.
And is this something that we can learn to do for ourselves? Because you're one person, and ideally many more people, or we all, ought to be able to go through a process to heal ourselves.
Yes, yes.
How do we do that? Is there a way you can learn it? Do you teach it? What advice would you give people who want to go on this journey?
To self-heal?
To self-heal and maybe eventually help others to heal?
Well, basically I'd say to them, first of all, get your attitude right. Because if your attitude is kind, understanding, forgiving, positive, very positive, then you're on the way to being a healer. You don't have to be sympathetic to be a healer. You have to be empathetic. Sympathy gets you nowhere, sucks you down a hole, but empathy doesn't. So if you wanted to heal yourself and balance yourself, well, you've got to have good self-esteem, which means you've got to have a good attitude. If you want to do the healing on others, you've got to have enthusiasm, because it will never steer you wrong. Never, never. Because when enthusiasm appears in the aura, you get all the richest colours you could possibly get, and they will reward you every step of the way. So just doing that to heal yourself. But as far as healing yourself, well, today the world is full of it. You've got exposure to all the different healing modalities that work wonders. If you see the energy that what acupuncture puts into the aura, or reflexology puts into the aura, or homeopathy puts into the aura, or herbal medicine, all of these things impact it in an energetic way. Like homeopathy puts all these different colours, streams of silver and gold energy that goes into the aura. Acupuncture puts all these vibrations that tap into the physical level, go out to the etheric and straight into the astral. Reflexology, it's just fascinating to watch all these modalities working in the human aura. Drugs don't do the same.
So those are positive
Yes.
things. And drugs from the mainstream healthcare system do not have a positive impact on our aura?
If they're short-term use, they have effect on the physical layer. Only short-term. But if somebody is on long-term drugs, because there's nothing else on offer, right, for them, no, it does damage their aura. It does damage the aura. And you can damage the aura. And the aura is damaged by trauma. Yes.
And what does that look like?
Well, it depends on the type of trauma. If it's trauma from health, then it has pale blue, this magic sensitivity pale blue. It comes in with fawns and browns and whatever. So it means that you're depleting again.
So Judith, you have the ability to see all of the colors in the human aura, to see the health of an individual and all of the details of how different things in our environment contribute to that. Let's talk about essentially what is good for the human aura and the health of a human being, and what is bad. So I want to talk about the effect of technology on the human aura. Let's start with that and how you've seen how technology use has increased over the past few decades and what that does to the human aura.
Well, the human aura is an energy that breathes. It's connected to the atmosphere that surrounds us. The moment we step out of our house into the atmosphere, go for a walk in the park. So it's connected to that. Technology is not connected to that. So it's got an artificial energy connecting into our energy, and they are combating each other. Our aura, because it's opening and because it's breathing and it's linked to the atmosphere around us, it quite happily absorbs the technology coming in. But the technology is coming into the physical layer of the aura, and it's creating chaos in the aura. And chaos means that it's coming in, it's doing patterns like this, cross, like that. And you see them in waves, and that's the technology.
Right.
Mobile phones are worse.
Yeah.
Absolutely. They are, yes, they're worse. Nobody should ever carry a mobile phone on their person. So women carry it in a handbag.
Yeah.
Men, I don't know where you're going to carry it, but don't carry it on your person. But
I mean, it's crazy because that's so common. Everyone does it, right? I mean, I've done it before. I put it in my back pocket sometimes when I'm listening to something, or I do have a little bum bag that I put it in now, but that's still quite close to my body. So is it always emitting a harmful technology or, harmful waves? Or is it just when we're using it or when we're on a phone call?
It's always.
Yeah.
Always. I tell you how I use it, because I love technology. I find it very, very efficient. Mobile phone, when I'm in the house, stays in one room, doesn't move. And it stays in the room with the computer, the printer, the scanner, everything. They're all there, all concentrated, and they're not allowed to leak into any other room. So what I do with that, I have, if you look above you, you'll see a big ceiling fan.
Yeah.
I open the door, the energy of the atmosphere comes in, the ceiling fan moves all that energy around, and it prevents that energy from the end room coming through to this room.
Okay.
Yes.
What does the access to the outside or the moving wind?
The access of the air coming in.
Yeah.
The fan circulating the air.
Yeah.
Right. Stops 60 to 70% of the energy coming from the computers and the mobile phones and any battery charges whatsoever coming into this room where we're recording.
Oh, fascinating.
Yeah.
Okay, so
buy a ceiling fan. That's good for your aura.
A ceiling fan. Okay, cool. So we'll get into all the things that are good for the aura, right? So that's mobile phones, and that's concerning. What over a long period of time, and I know we've seen it. Like I know we've seen the rise of certain cancers.
If you're talking cancer has different vibrations in an aura than anything else.
Okay.
It's linked to viruses.
Cancer is linked to viruses.
In the same patterns of aura, just as people doing cross-gender, it has the same patterns as autism in the aura. So there's got to be some kind of link with viruses and cancer yet to be discovered. Because if you've got a virus in your body, right?
Yeah.
Not feeling well, whatever.
Yeah.
Cancer has exactly the same patterns as a virus.
Interesting.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, interesting. So I guess if we think about viruses as cell signals, a cell signal for a malfunctioning cell, then I guess it's the same thing.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Interesting.
Yeah.
Okay, so what specifically does technology such as a mobile phone do to our health?
the simplest way to explain it is it upsets all the vibrations of the human aura. Yes.
Yeah.
If a human aura is flowing like this, the cell is going, vroom, vroom. It's knocking it down all the time.
Yeah.
So how will that make a person feel?
Yeah.
The first thing that they will feel is fatigue.
Yeah.
Yep. And they say, geez, I'm tired lately. Get off your mobile phone.
Yeah.
Loss of appetite is another one.
Okay.
Picky with your food is another one.
What is that?
Picky with your food is because all food gives energy to the physical body.
Yeah.
The body is attracted. We are attracted to food, to eat food. It's appetizing, right? But the signals are all wrong because you've got a flowing atmosphere, right? That's linked to all the atmosphere called the global aura or the human aura. That technology is a different energy.
Yeah.
And so therefore, that doesn't cause it to dissipate. What it does, it upsets the flow, the rhythm of it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So then you end up being out of sync or out of flow with natural foods that give you life and give you goodness.
Yes.
Wow, interesting. So, more recently, the Bluetooth headphones.
No.
I know I've never liked them. I don't use them. I really try to encourage people against them because of my understanding of how it can really cause a lot of harm to your health. But what do you see in particular with the Bluetooth headphones and how that affects the human aura?
Well, the Bluetooth headphones, within about 3 minutes, concentrates all its energy down around the jaw. Around like that, underneath the jaw. I'm waiting to see what that does to the human body. Because that energy is not going anywhere else in the body. Oh.
That's fascinating.
So then when you look at the jaw, you got to think, what does that do? It's linked to the neck. It's linked to your teeth.
Yeah.
It's linked to your lymphatics. So I don't know what will come of that. Yeah. But I know that it's fascinating because it's not moving anywhere else away from the jaw. Yeah. Whereas mobile phone sends the energy straight through the body and upsets the entire body. Upsets the entire body.
Yeah, interesting.
Sitting in front of a computer doesn't do that as much.
Okay.
Sitting in front of a computer, say if you're at work and you're working on a computer for 6 or 7 hours of the day, that will come in and it will upset the balance of your aura and make you feel tired and make you feel a little disgruntled with life. You're easily irritated. That's when you know you've been sitting in front of a computer too long. You're easily irritated. That's the first sign.
Totally.
And you need to go and sit outside in the atmosphere under a tree in the sunlight, something like that.
Yeah. Yeah. So mobile phones, very disruptive.
Yes, very.
Computers, less so.
Yes.
Bluetooth headphones, wireless headphones concentrated in the jaw, but we're not really sure why.
No.
I was saying it's quite funny that's called Bluetooth. It's like sort of like a dead tooth kind of thing, but that's connected to a lot of stuff, which is interesting because I personally do know a lot of people who started using them. And after about a year, they started reporting symptoms of like headache, brain fog, all this kind of stuff. And it sort of dissipated once they stopped using Bluetooth headphones.
What I didn't explain is that it doesn't go past the jaw. It concentrates all in the jaw, which means it's filling the entire head.
Oh, okay. Yeah.
So what's it going to do? Eyes? Lymphatics?
Okay, yeah.
Teeth?
Yeah.
Brain? Hearing? What's it going to do?
I don't know why that is. Yeah. So it doesn't go down.
Doesn't go down, and I don't know why.
Yeah.
Don't know why.
Yeah. And so what about Wi-Fi in the house? Just connect to the internet. Bad? Not too bad? Because every single house, I would argue,
not too bad. Not too bad. Yeah. Not too bad. But there are things that you have to do in your home to make sure that you're not being infiltrated, that you aurically, physically, because if it penetrates your aura, it gets into you physically, right? There's certain things that you can do. You can have scented oils burning.
Mm-hmm.
You can have
that helps against
that
Wi-Fi.
helps against that, because that's heightening your senses. So when you heighten your senses, that's a protective type of a sense. Scented candles will do, as you'll see, there's scented candles over there. Scented candles will do. One of the best things to do in your home that don't cost you any extra money to run it on power is just to get a ceiling fan in. Because the ceiling fan is moving the natural source of energy on this planet. And so it's dissipating the electrified electronics. It's dissipating all the energies that come from that, because houses are light, and so that can interfere with the human aura as well. So I find the easiest way I've worked out, and that's probably about, 30, 40 years ago, I worked out that ceiling fans did it. I was in Tasmania. I did a lecture tour in Tasmania, and I'd been out swimming in the ocean, and I came in and I noticed that people were sitting under the ceiling fans, and I noticed a change in their auras. And so I decided to observe that for the week that I was staying there. And I noticed that when they were sitting under ceiling fans, their auras weren't as infiltrated easily by electronics.
Okay. So what about those smart homes? Like Google Homes, how everything's... So I remember having a house sit in a very beautiful mansion, but everything was electronified and automated, as far as the lights, the lawnmower, the TV, the heating, everything. And we didn't have a good sleep for 6 weeks. And I assume that the interfering electronics would have something to do with that.
I wouldn't have it. What I know about auras, I wouldn't have it. I pride myself on loving technology, but keeping it at its distance from where I want to sleep, where I want to sit down and read a book, maybe where I want to sit down in front of telly and watch a documentary. I keep as much technology away as possible. So I wouldn't have that, because it disrupts every part of your aura. You haven't got any escape from it anywhere in the house.
So the use of technology has become quite inevitable nowadays, right? Mobile phones, computers, a lot of that kind of stuff. So what are some of the things that we can do that will have a positive impact on our auric field to cleanse it and refresh it whilst we still have to use technology?
All right, let's give an example for people to use in their day-to-day life. If you live in an apartment that's got a balcony, just take a nice glass of wine or a nice cup of coffee or whatever, go and sit out on the balcony, but sit there for a good 40 minutes. Right? 40 minutes.
Without your technology?
Yes, without technology. Leave that mobile phone behind. My mobile phone stays in my study with all my computers. If I go out to the garden, if I sit on the veranda, I do not take it with me. I don't care if I've got to return a message, but I do not take it with me. Other things that people can do is on a new moon, go for a nice walk, take the dog for a walk in the park. Sit out in your backyard, find a nice reclining chair and sit out in your backyard. Under the new moon, because it's bringing new energy, and it's the new energy is linked to the astral part of our aura and can infiltrate that and rejuvenate us. Fresh air rejuvenates, and people want to know how to cleanse their aura, and the best ways to do is just go for a walk in a park.
Touching the earth with your bare feet.
Go barefooted as much as you possibly can. That's very, very important. But going for a walk in the park, it causes a lot of changes in the aura. If it's a park that's got a lot of old trees, 100-year-old trees, would you get a change of parts of the astral aura that are linked to past lives, old wisdom, old knowledge. That gets enhanced under a 100-year-old tree.
Sure.
Yeah, it does.
Because it's something about it resonates.
That's right. It resonates together.
Yeah.
If you go down to a pond and you feed the ducks, that comes into another part of the astral aura where you have done these things before in past lives. And what you're doing is you're just revisiting without knowing. You're revisiting, therefore allowing all that energy from those lifetimes to come through and charge you and recharge you in this lifetime.
Beautiful. Yeah. So walking in nature in the parks,
Yep.
so would you say sunlight?
Yep.
Fresh air?
Sunlight has got to be first of the morning,
First
not
thing in
during the
morning.
day.
Okay.
Yes.
Yeah. As in avoid it in the afternoon?
Yeah, because there's a couple of things happen with sunlight in the morning. The air is cleaner and crisper. I'm talking about people living in cities and suburbs, right? And so the sun of the first morning, somewhere around 5:30, 7 o'clock in the morning, the sun is at the best for your aura.
Okay.
And the air. Now, the importance of the new moon and the importance of the morning sun is the quality of the air that surrounds us, because that's what recharges us.
Okay.
Yes.
Yeah. What are some other things that can help cleanse your auric field? I think you mentioned music. Music is a great cleanser. It has to be instrumental. Yeah. But it can be anything you want instrumental. You can have jazz. Yeah. You know, you can have marching bands. Okay. You can have violin concertos, any kind of instrumental music. I start the beginning of my day with Govi, Govi, because he writes all the music that allows me to think everything through before I start for the day. Yeah. But during the day, when I start to wane and I get a little tired, out come the African drums and the Celtic music to lift up my spirit and move onwards. Yeah. Can the music be used to also cleanse the house and almost dissipate the effects of the electronic interference? Yes. The music can give a balance because it gives its own colour energy. Yeah. Colour furniture can help as well. Oh, yeah? Yeah, colour furniture. Make sure that you don't have one block colour because it dominates the energy in the room. A lounge chair and armchair should be multicoloured, or have 2 or 3 colours in it, whether it be cushions added to it or something. Yeah. Because you've got to dissipate. You don't want one colour to dominate the area. Okay. You want it to be blended out with other colours for a balance. Yeah. Yeah. But music, that's what I do. I get out of bed and I put Govi on because it balances absolutely everything, the atmosphere. Ceiling fans go on, and that carries that around. So I've got the colour energy coming out from the music. Yeah. Anybody wants to find out about what the colour of music is, my Colour of Life book, which is an e-book on my blog, has all the different colours of the notes and the chords. Okay, cool. All the chords as well. I'll definitely put a link to that and a link to your blog. So music, singing bowls, tuning forks. Oh, singing bowls, tuning, bells, bells. Oh, absolutely beautiful bells. Okay. Yes. What I didn't mention is make sure that when you're playing the music, there is no vocals, because vocals tune the mind in to sentiment. And so it can either be happy or it can be sad, but it doesn't matter. You need not to have vocals when you're trying to cleanse any place. Yeah. Or you're trying to find peace within yourself. It's amazing how many people who are depressed play depressive music. Yeah. Or songs with depressive words. Yeah. Because the words and the vocals evoke an emotion. The emotion has some kind of charge. You want something neutral. Yep. Such as just instrumental. And if you come home and you've had really heavy work workspace, especially if you've worked in an open office, that confuses auras more than anything does, working in an open office space. Oh yes, you can imagine. You've got 20 people in an office space, all with their auras, all interchanging, and then computers at every station. Yeah.
And then they've got mobile phones sitting there.
And fluorescent lights.
Yeah. Oh, wow. That's charged.
So you also have the ability to remote view and astral travel?
Yes.
Okay, so can you tell us the difference between the two and what that experience is like for you?
Astral traveling is the ability to go within your own aura and to get into the astral layer of your aura that's connected to universal energy. And so it's like a corridor.
Yes, okay.
Mm.
Yes.
So that's astral traveling.
Yeah.
So you can go out through the corridor.
Yeah.
Now, in that astral layer of the aura, there's also all of the past life memories and different timelines working so that you can flip back into different timelines. If I give you an example,
Yeah.
One night at home, there was just my son, who was 19 at the time, and Paul, and they were looking for things to do. And I said to them, well, if you get the quilts out, get a few pillows, I'll take you to ancient Rome. And they went, oh, because neither one of them had ever astral travelled and they didn't even know what it was called.
Yeah.
But I said to them, come on, down you get, lay down on the lounge room floor. So we were comfortable, we held hands together, and then I just focused it on lifting their bodies up and out, because I knew that they didn't have the capabilities or the focus to do it themselves. So I used my energy to lift them out of their bodies. And so I took them into ancient Rome just to have a look at the architecture and the lifestyle.
Yeah.
And then I took them to a stone circle in Ireland.
Wow.
And looked at the worshipping at the stone circle.
Wow.
And then just as a fun route on the way home, I took them down the boulevard in Paris.
That must have been so wild for them.
It was. And when they came out, I knew that they would be, oh my God, what just happened? Oh my God, what would just happen?
Yeah.
So I looked at them and I said, anybody want a hot chocolate? And they went, yes. So I went to the kitchen, made a hot chocolate. We all sat round the table and then I allowed them to download their experience and tell me what they saw and what they felt. Yes.
Wow. That is so cool. So that's astral traveling.
Yes, and remote viewing is a different way of seeing the aura. Now, something I've done all my life, never put any importance on it, but I was programmed to go to Western Australia to do a lecture tour. And I was going to be interviewed by several different radio stations. One radio station from Perth called me in New South Wales and asked me a few questions and said, would you be prepared to come on my show? It's a talkback show. And I said, yes. I said, yes, I'd be happy to do that. And I said, but just before you go, I said, you see the lump on the side of your nose that your wife has been telling you to go and see a doctor about? And he said, yes. How do you know? And I said, because I can see it and I can see its roots. And I said, you've got to go and have that looked at. Well, what had happened, he got it looked at by the doctor, had it removed, and I didn't know any of this. So I fly from New South Wales, ready to start my Western Australian tour. I go into the radio station, not knowing that he's had it fixed by the doctor, forgetting about it all completely. I start the talkback radio show. He starts the interview and says, well, here she is, the lady in New South Wales who told me about my cancer, and I've just had it removed, and you all know the story, so start calling in the phones. Well, it really concentrated the switchboard. They'd never had so many calls.
Yeah.
And so I did, the first time ever, I did remote viewing publicly. So people were able to call in and I was able to answer their questions and give them extra information and even tell them information about somebody else in their family.
Wow.
So remote viewing is just checking into the aura of another person.
Right.
Yeah, but
Okay.
you're doing it with their permission.
Mhm.
Now, when I've worked with detectives, when I've worked with the law, you don't have that kind of permission to go looking. But
So you were hired by the police force or detectives to assist with?
no, I wasn't hired. I did it voluntary. They asked me.
Okay.
Yeah,
Yeah.
they asked me.
Yeah.
If a couple of the cases went cold and they had no more leads to it, or if it was a public interest case, then I often got asked to help without anybody knowing, without the media knowing.
Right.
And I give you an example. One little girl had been abducted and they had searched for her for 6 days, and they were getting really, really worried about how soon they could find her. And the detective rang me and he said, could you help? And I said, well, if you can get a photograph of the girl in front of you, and I said, I will check her identity by looking through you. And I said, right, she's a brunette, she's got big brown eyes, and she's wearing an orange top. He said, yes, that's right. And I said, right, so we're now focused on the right person. I said, right, now you go down this road, down that road, down this road, down that road, turn off there, onto the track that goes into the bush. I said, and she's laying face down in the dam. And so they found her body later
She had died.
Yes, she'd been murdered. And later that night on the news, it said that her body had been found.
Wow.
Yes.
Wow.
I get no feedback from any of it. I just give them the information.
And have you had many cases like that? Many situations like that?
I've worked with lots of cases.
Yeah. Okay, just behind the scenes.
Yes, and some really, really big ones where I've had to sign the Official Secrets Act.
Wow.
Yeah, 2 big cases.
So I guess we're not allowed to talk about it.
No, we're not allowed to talk about those.
Right. But it's fascinating that, because this was a while ago, where this kind of astral traveling or remote viewing was considered even more bizarre back then.
Yes, yes.
And so it's fascinating that even at a very high level of maybe government or organization would trust you to assist them.
Yes, yes, yes.
Yeah.
I knew how important it was, not only the work that I was doing, but what was entrusted to me. I knew the responsibility that carried.
Yeah. So speaking of responsibility, when it comes to having these extrasensory perceptions of people, I suppose it could feel a little invasive, right? For someone, if you read their aura without permission or astral traveling, how did you navigate your own morals around that? And how did you ensure that you always acted in integrity when using these abilities?
Well, Paul and I have been together for 52 years before he died. Never once in that lifetime did I ever read his aura.
Your husband?
Yes.
Wow.
Never.
Wow.
Not because I didn't want to know anything.
Wow.
It's because that's being respectful.
The whole time?
The whole time.
And he didn't want you to?
No.
He didn't want you to?
No.
Even when he was quite unwell?
No. No.
Wow, that blows my mind. I mean, I'm curious by nature, hence why I'm interviewing you and asking all these questions. Tell me about that.
Well, see, when people have approached me and said that they want to learn how to see and read an aura, I ask them why. Why? Why do you want to see and read a human aura?
Yeah.
Because with it comes huge responsibility. Because if you're a person who judges easily, if you're a person, say, who's quick to judge, if you're a person who gossips, you're the last person who needs to read an aura.
Yeah.
You've got to be able to read auras with great discipline. And my discipline is that I never read any of the children's auras. I never read...
Any of your children?
Nope, never.
Wow.
And never read any of my brothers or their wives.
Wow.
My parents,
Yeah.
Yep.
So
never.
this is after you were able to figure out how to turn it off, because you were overwhelmed with it as a child, right? You couldn't help it.
I never learned to turn it off until I was 27 years old.
27. So before that.
So my husband had to live with me not being able to turn the auras off. Yes.
But so you guys met at 17,
Mhm.
so you could still see his aura.
Oh yes.
Okay.
Well and truly.
Right. Okay.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah. So
But
when you said you never read his aura.
No, I never read his aura, never analysed his aura.
Okay.
Yes.
Okay.
But I saw it, but I never analysed it.
Okay. Yeah.
Yes.
Because it takes the time to do that.
No, is because to analyse it is to know every damn detail in the aura. To see it is just, if you can look at a picture and you see the picture, and then if you're in the art world, they analyse it. They analyse the colours, the shadows, and what the artist is trying to say. I didn't go that far because I never wanted to read their auras.
Why not?
I think because I see it as an invasion of privacy.
Mm-hmm.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And they never asked you to read it?
No.
Yeah. So tell me about how you navigated that when your husband was sick, quite unwell for a few years, and how did you work through the curiosity of just wanting to be able to figure out what's wrong so you could help him?
I'll tell you that, but I'll tell you something that my ethics of not reading aura did something to shatter my life. Now, talking about my husband when he was sick, I was saying to him, just tell me what you want me to do. That was either to heal him, put some healing into his. He just said to me, just keep kissing me. And that's all he said. So I didn't look into his aura for healing because it's his journey. Mind you, when I looked after him for all those years, I was the one that grew all the food at home, prepared all his meals, changed his meals according to what illness he had at the time, because I nursed him for 22 years. And so that's why I removed myself from the public arena and looked after him. But what my ethics and how it shattered my life is my cousin David and I had been the best of mates since we were 3 years old. He came down to see me. He was about 32 years old, I think, and brought his fiancée down to see me. And I looked at her and saw that she was really ill, very ill. And she had decay patterns every part of her body. It wasn't until the whole episode ended that I found out that she had leukemia. And he had seen me that day. He picked me up, swung me around, gave me a kiss on the cheek, came inside, had afternoon tea. We had a nice talk, and I was really disturbed by her aura. Anyway, so they up and left. And because I don't read anybody's auras, because of ethics, people who are close to me, family are close to me, neighbours, I do not read their auras, right? He committed suicide because she was dying. They got married just before she died, and he committed suicide.
Before she died?
2 days after she died.
Okay.
And I never saw it in his aura. And I have to live with that. If I hadn't have been so ethical, I would have seen it. I would have seen she knew she was dying. They knew that they wanted to be together. He'd planned that he was going to commit suicide. And I never saw it. Yes. So that's one time in my life where my ethics has slapped me in the face.
And you feel like if you saw it, you could have changed it?
I could have. But the universe didn't want it. It happened the way it happened.
Yeah.
And I counselled myself through that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And that maybe you couldn't have done anything.
Maybe not.
Yeah.
Mm.
How would you have done it differently, looking back on it now?
I don't think I would have read his aura.
Mm.
I don't think I would have read his aura, because that meant that I would have read everybody else's auras.
Yeah.
No. When you read someone's aura, you know them instantly. You never get to build a relationship.
Yeah.
Yes. When I saw Paul's aura at the age of 17, I knew I was to marry him.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
Love at first sight.
And then I had to wait and stop. But fortunately, it only took 10 days. And Paul said to me, he said, I think we should spend the rest of our lives together.
Oh.
Yes.
That's beautiful. He caught up quick, huh?
Yes, he did. Yes. Paul was a very loving person, very loyal, loving person. Yes.
Okay.
Mm.
So was that hard, not being able to just see what he needed to help him through his illness?
No.
Okay.
No.
Yeah.
Wasn't.
Yeah.
Because of the 50 plus years we'd spent together, we had come to understand each other intimately. We could at times predict or read each other's minds. And that's Paul, the non-spiritual person. He did support and believe this journey, but he had meditated, he'd done Reiki healing, he was a naturopath, he was an aromatherapist, he was a Bowen therapist, he was a numerologist. So it tells you who he was, but he had never advanced that far, right? And if he had asked at any stage for me to step in, he would have, and I would have, but he didn't, and I didn't. Yes, but he did at the end.
He did at the end?
At the end. The doctors came in and said that they thought that they could do certain things for him, but it was just getting worse. They said, we could cut this out, we could do this, we could do that, but it's just going to keep getting worse. And we just don't think that there's an end to it, and you'll be in a lot of pain. And the doctor said, so what do you want to do? And Paul said to me, he said, what do you think? And I said, Paul, it's your body, it's your life. And he looked at me. And for the first time ever, he said to me, look at where my life is taking me. And I looked at the doctors and I said to the doctors, that's it.
That was the first time. And you just knew what he meant.
I looked at his aura.
Yeah.
That's the first time ever.
Right. And how much later after that did he pass?
4 days.
Wow. Wow. Yeah. And you have an ability to communicate with those who have passed, right?
Yes, yes.
Can you tell me about that a little bit? Or just how that's shown up in your life, what that's like for you? Do you perceive them as their human form was, or is it like a voice, or can you interact with Paul, or things like that?
Yes, after Paul died, he's been dead for 3 months now, and I haven't found him anywhere, right? Anywhere. And I thought, hello, hello, hello. That's the universe. Stand on your own 2 feet, take your own journey. And then I go to have a transfusion of iron at the doctor's surgery, and Paul appears. So I want to share with people, if you've lost a loved one, how your aura works, because this is fascinating. I learnt this when my grandmother died when I was 8 years old. When you cry, crying is an energy. and it's an emotional energy, and it works through the etheric layer of the aura and the astral layer of the aura, and it brings your loved one to you to comfort you in spirit. So if you're a child, young child that's lost their mother, and you're laying in bed and you're crying, that crying is a communication to the person who has passed over to come to you for comfort.
When you're crying about that person in particular?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes.
Not if you're crying about it, just...
No. When you're crying about that person in particular,
Okay.
brings them, it's a communication, and it works through the etheric into the astral.
Yeah.
I find that fascinating, because
Interesting.
this is another layer. That's what I learned when my grandmother died. So all these things I've learned as a child, just watching life as it proceeds.
Yeah.
But seeing people and spirits, it's up to the spirit as to whether or not they come in a form. It's not up to what you see. So some people might feel a touch. That's very, very common, because in the spirit realm, they can come right through the astral into the etheric, and then you will feel somebody just holding your hand. You won't see it, but you'll feel it. But that's an auric sensation. That's why understanding your aura is so important, because it can keep you connected to all your loved ones who have passed.
Interesting.
Some people will see their mother, an image of their mother, and they will know it as their mother. Why will they know it's their mother? Simply because the astral layer of the aura records your life and her life together. And so when she appears, all of that information gels, and you have an instant knowing, recognition, and understanding.
Fascinating. Very cool.
Oh, the aura is fascinating.
I know, it's so fascinating. So I want to go back to the ethics part and the integrity part. How would you navigate astral traveling when there wasn't someone's permission to ask? So for example, if it was for a detective case or to view a situation, there's no one to ask permission if you can view it. How did you navigate that?
Well, I've never done any astral travelling with detectives or anything. I've only done remote viewing.
Sorry, I mean remote viewing. Because
Right.
that's still, permission is still quite important for that kind of thing too, isn't it?
Well, the remote viewing that I've done with detectives has been with the permission of the people who are wounded, a murdered child. It's the permission of the parents.
Okay.
Right?
Yeah.
Cases that I have worked on, big cases that I've worked on, have been the permission from the victims.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay, cool. So what other times has navigating ethics come up in your life, or that you've observed, especially around maybe other people who have, you know, some extrasensory abilities? I can imagine you might have seen people throw that around who might not have held themselves in as high in integrity. Tell us about what you've seen.
I've seen a number of people who have been excited to discover their clairvoyant tendencies, and they tend to show off with it.
Yeah, and clairvoyance specifically is the ability to see?
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes. Or the ability to know, not so much to see, but to know.
Yeah.
And when you know, you do see, but you don't visually see.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
Seeing auras is it's got a huge responsibility with it. Huge.
Yeah.
Huge. Because a lot of people who are developing their skills get all excited and begin to show off. And I've come across a number of them over the years who have opened their mouth and embarrassed the person that they were telling the information to.
Without permission.
Oh, without permission. Yeah, without permission.
Yeah.
Just walking up and telling them something. And whilst it was accurate, it was wrong, because they embarrassed the person or humiliate them in front of other people, or say things that they shouldn't say in public. Yes.
Do you have an example?
Oh, yes. One clairvoyant I threw my shoe at.
Actually threw your shoe at?
Yep, took the shoe off. There was a group of people queuing up for a cup of coffee, right? There would have been about 25 people in the queue. And this clairvoyant sitting down, and she spots somebody in the queue. And she's reading the person. And so she walks up to the person, not knowing them, and says, "Oh, aren't you going through a traumatic time in your life?" She said, "With your husband, throwing things at the house and burning out your car and subjecting your children to trauma. And, oh, yes, but your daughter's not responding to this psychologist." And she was going, blah, 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 blah. And everybody in the queue was turning around looking at this poor woman who was being ostracised by this clairvoyant, publicly humiliated. I couldn't stand it. And this clairvoyant wouldn't shut up. She just kept going. So I took my shoe off to distract her and I threw it at her. And that shut her up.
How did that go down?
And then I walked up to get my shoe, picked my shoe up, and put it back on. And I said to the woman who was buying the cup of coffee, I said to her, "Get your coffee and then come back with me." And I said, "We'll sit down and talk about this." And then I told her where she was weak and what was wrong with the daughter, why her daughter wasn't responding to the psychologist. And we just did it quietly like that. And that clairvoyant, I immortalised her. I put her in my aura book.
Did you end up talking to her?
I actually turned to her and said, "Shame on you flaunting your cleverness like that. Shame on you."
And do you think she got the message?
I think she did.
Yeah. Yeah.